Welcome to Subramani. Many of us are individual investors who manage our own portfolios, and unfortunately in India we do not have enough websites or tools to decide whether we are doing a good job, right? So and we do think that we don't need an advisor, and then there are some apps which are largely here to collect data from you to sell products to you, right? So whether they make YouTube channels, whether they advertise, whether they ask you to optimize your portfolio, whatever it is, ultimately they want to sell some products to you. In fact, I was asked to appear on some channel, which I said no, it does not make me I'm not very keen to be there, right? So what I'm trying to drive at is, people think that they can do their own investment, which is not wrong, but the question is to know how much to buy, how long to hold, and what period of investments that you are going to make. So for example, if you were to invest for a long period of time, let's say in different buckets, something like 1 to 2 years for your children's requirement, or your own requirement of buying a car or taking a vacation, something which say 3 to 5 years kind of a thing, maybe you're upgrading your house or replacing your car or something like that. Or even for all your white goods, maybe your air conditioner and fridge and things like that, which you want to change. Or something even longer, children's higher education, or something say more than 10 years later, which could be children's education or your own retirement. For different buckets, you need different portfolios, right? There will be some core and some satellite portfolio. So let me just explain. In the core portfolio of mine, where I'm going to give you examples from equity, I have HDFC, I have Reliance, now it is HDFC Bank, I have Reliance, right? I have Carborundum Universal, Cholamandalam, and EID Parry, stuff like this, right? Of course, I have Tata Steel, Tata Motors, what have you, right? So will I ever go to zero in these shares? Answer is no. This is the fulcrum around which my portfolio gets built. Similarly, you need a fulcrum for your 10-year portfolio. Now for your 2-year portfolio, today given the way we are going to pay tax, it hardly matters where you invest, because even if you invest in a liquid fund or in a savings bank account, you're going to pay tax at the same rates, and you're going to pay, so it does not really matter. Only advantage with keeping money in funds like liquid funds or ultra short bond funds is you choose when to pay the tax. It's not a question of whether to pay the tax. And if you're young, the chances are as you grow older, suppose you're 32, 35, chances are your income will only keep going up for another 25 years. So it hardly matters where you keep the money in the 1 to 2 year bucket. So that will largely be in debt funds. So there you don't really have to do too much of core and satellite. Your core could be an ultra short bond fund or a liquid fund or bank fixed deposit. Doesn't really change much. However, when you take a longer period, like say 10 years, what do you want to be the core? What should be the core? The common feeling today in the US is it should not be a large cap fund. You're restricting yourself to a large cap when you're putting money in a large cap fund. Largely the fund manager may underperform the index, but more chances are that within those 100 shares in which to pick up, there's a huge competition. There are more than 100 funds trying to pick shares from those 100 shares. So it's going to be very, very difficult for you to decide which large cap fund to put in. And I do agree now that large cap fund may not be the core of your portfolio. So what could it be? For a very conservative investor, it could be a balanced advantage fund or a multi-asset fund. Even for a second, I'm not saying balanced advantage fund or multi-asset funds are not risky, but I'm saying in terms of growing, a pure equity fund may do much better. So a flexi cap fund or a mid cap or a multi-cap fund may do better, where obviously the multi-cap is less risky from a investor point of view, because you know that these are pockets of 20 25, 25, 25 that will happen, and the fund manager is taking a position only on the last 25%. But in case of a flexi cap fund, the fund manager is taking a bigger risk, and largely most flexi cap funds are large cap oriented, because historically they have been large cap oriented, and fund managers are very scared to reduce the large cap orientation or change the large cap orientation of the fund. So what should be your core and what should be your satellite fund for a 10-year plus range? Anything less also we will talk, but 10-year range, if you are young and aggressive, maybe you're 32 years of age, maybe you're 5% in debt and 95% in equity also makes sense, then yes, a flexi cap fund or a large and mid cap fund, the fund manager should have options to go beyond the top 100. That is very important to me. I think your blue chip funds and top 100 kind of funds will find it very difficult to act within that restrictive space. But having said that, I'm sure that some of them will be generating alpha. It is for you to guess which are the ones which will be generating alpha. Long ago I had this discussion with a fund manager who was running a pure equity fund and a prudence fund, right? So and I suspected, I spoke, and he also said that yes, the fund with 80% in equity will outperform the fund which is 100% in equity. And I have not seen the recent numbers, but yes, I have had share my money in the prudence fund, which has changed, it's morphed into balance advantage or whatever the new name is. It is still a good fund, and I think some fund like that or a multi-asset fund could be a core of your portfolio even for a period of say 10 years. For 30 years my answer would be different, and I would say just go for equity, which is 95% equity and 5% in debt kind of a fund, which I mean does not exist. Right, so something like that for a very long term, say 25 years, 30 years. If you're 30 years of age, you're talking 30 years to go for your retirement, right? So then yes, a full large cap fund or a full flexi cap fund may work for you, but I would still think I would go to a flexi cap fund rather than a large cap fund. So a large cap fund may not be core, but having said that, when the time frame is lesser, basically you are looking for a fund which when it goes down recovers quickly, right? So even assuming that you are in a fund with say 70% in debt and 30% in equity, that can also go down. So extremely rarely will it go down because equity has not done well, right? So but it is possible, but the speed at which it recovers simply because of the interest income etc coming into it will make sure that the recovery time is much faster than a large cap fund, especially if the market remains down. So when two funds go down, one with 70% debt and 30% equity, the chances of that fund coming back to into reckoning or the time taken for it to come back to be in reckoning is much shorter than for a pure equity fund. So you have to make your choices where you want to be. But I would think a balance advantage fund or a multi-asset fund can also be the core, especially if you are older and you want some exposure to equity but not too much exposure to equity. So multi-asset fund and equity savings fund, these could be good for older people with who want lesser volatility. Not that they can't take the risk, but the need to take risk is gone away. So maybe at the age of 70 somebody can go completely into balance advantage fund and multi-asset fund and get out of pure equity schemes, or at least 70% of their portfolio can be in such schemes. That reminds me, how much should be there in your core of your portfolio? It could be a big range. Morningstar says the range should be something like 40 to 80%. I agree, because what happens is when you start you may be at 80% in that fund, but as you find better funds or newer funds which are maybe more nimble footed, US fund or a value fund or opportunity fund, you will keep putting some money into those. So therefore this 80% will anyway keep coming down. Also, at some stage you may desire to change the core itself. You may want to say that I don't want this as a core, I will create something else as a core. I will create something with 70% in debt and 30% in equity as my core, rather than a 30% in debt and 70% in equity. The need to create a new core can happen depending on the age that I am and my income flow. For example, you are 60 years of age, you have retired, but you have got a new job. You were drawing 50 lakhs at the time you retired, but this new job is paying you about 10-12 lakhs, which is fantastic because this 12 lakhs is going to take care of your expenses, so you're not going to touch the portfolio, right? So based on all this, you have to create what is going to be a core and what are going to be your satellite funds. Now all this can be done by you, provided you are interested in doing this, or you have to do it with the help of an advisor. And please be careful, there are not too many advisors who understand these concepts, so please be careful in choosing an advisor. Or if you are interested, there are enough websites etc. where you can go and learn about it, but without learning you cannot create a portfolio. So you have to understand portfolio sizing and the core of your portfolio, and the core of your portfolio, whether it should be 80 or whether it should be 40, changes with time. So you need to understand all this either by yourself or with the help of an advisor. Thank you.